appointment.
About what?
About the placement.
Yeah. Once you submit all of the assessments, you have to come face to face. I know you have sent me email with the police check and so on. So
Yeah.
did I give you a feedback?
Not yet.
Okay, so you might have to come one of the days. I might send you an email. And then you might have to come one of the days. I know that your file is prepared, so you just need to come one of the days. If there is any resubmission, you better do them. And also, I'll approve your placement on the same day.
Okay, so
you wait for my email.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's it only. Have a great weekend, everyone.
All right, cheers. Thanks. Right. Do we have any new students here today? Anyone new?
Jyoti.
Jyoti, yeah. Welcome to the session, Jyoti. Anyone else?
I'm also new here. Samiksha.
Samiksha, onto the camera, Samiksha. All of you onto the camera, guys. I've got Jyoti, I've got Samiksha. Anyone else?
Mohan.
Some rewatch.
Mohan, yeah.
Yeah, Deepika.
Deepika onto the camera. Yeah.
Okay.
And who else? Kulvinder Kaur.
Rewatch also.
Ribach, yeah. Kulvinder Kaur. Yeah. All of you onto the cameras, guys. Maria Tiffany. So once again, good morning to everyone. Let's get started.
Good morning, Mr. Rakesh. Hope you're doing very well.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yes, I'm well. Do you have a question? Jyoti? Yeah, you're good. All right. So all new students, please make a note. New students, please make a note that you're starting this course with unit number 3. Today we are doing number 3. So all new students, please make a note that you're starting this course with unit number 3. So every week we do 1 unit. This week we're doing number 3. Next week, number 4, and so on.
Okay.
So once we get to unit number 13, we go back to 1, 2.
Okay.
All right. And once you're done with all theory classes, then we look into your placements.
Okay.
All right. And all of the assessments will be coming to my email. You'll be provided with the assessment in between the session. I'll take the emails in between. I'll ask for it. That's when you send me the email addresses in the public chat, and I'll send you the assessment. Then you'll complete your responses and email it back to me as a new email. Okay. Now, so today's unit is about communication, which is the code for this particular unit is CHC COM 005. That's the code for the unit. Communicate and work in health or community services. Communicate and work in health or community services. Under this particular unit, you have 6 topics. Communicate effectively with people, collaborate with colleagues, address constraints to communication, report problems to supervisor, complete workplace correspondence, and documentation. And the last one is contribute to the continuous improvement. So these are the 6 topics that you have for this particular unit. Now to start with, why do you have to do this particular unit? Working in an aged care or community services, or in the health sector, we need to make sure that we are effectively communicating. I request everyone to be on a mute while you are not asking any questions or so on, because I can hear the background noises.
Mr. Rakesh, can I have one question, please?
Go for it.
Yes, this unit that we are going to start, we would be able to see on the college website all these courses. The study material would be there.
No, I'll be sending it to you guys in between the session. When I send the assessment, I'll send you the PowerPoint and learner resources as well.
Okay, so while listening to you, we'll be just making the notes.
Yes,
Okay.
you can make the notes for now.
Okay.
You have to just wait for one session to finish. That's it. You'll know what it is.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So the purpose of this particular unit is to make sure that we are communicating effectively in the health sector or in the aged care. So that's why you're doing this particular unit. This unit will ensure that you get enough knowledge and skills of what kind of questions do you ask in order to make sure that your communication is effective. And what are the things that you have to consider when you are communicating with anyone at workplace, including your clients family members, your colleagues, and so on. When you're interacting with anyone at workplace, you need to make sure that your communication is effective. So to make sure your communication is effective, there are multiple things that you may have to do, and that's what you're going to learn in this particular unit. Now, the first topic is about communicate effectively with people. How do you make sure that you're communicating effectively with people? So what is communication? Communication is basically transferring of information from one person to another person or one place to another place. That's communication, all right? And there are different modes of communication. One is verbal and the other one is non-verbal. Now, when we talk about verbal communication, you're talking whether it's a telephonic conversation or a face-to-face conversation. So what are the things that you have to consider when you are communicating verbally with someone? So verbal communication, when you're communicating, make sure that you are speaking slowly and clearly. Speaking slowly and clearly. Yep. Make sure that your tone is appropriate. Make sure that your grammar and pronunciation is correct. Now, when it comes to non-verbal communication, in non-verbal communication, what are the things that are included? Your body language, your gestures, your eye contact, your facial expressions. Now, these are some of the things that are included in the non-verbal communication. Now, when you are communicating with someone, especially if you're communicating face-to-face, your verbal and non-verbal communication should be effective in order to send a message across to the other party. Now, how do you make sure that it's effective? You monitor what you're saying and how you're saying things to monitor the tone. And monitor, sometimes you might have to show the body language, 2, 3, example. Yeah. So this will help us to communicate effectively with our clients. There are some other techniques that we're going to learn about, but to start with, these are the things that you have to consider when it comes to verbal and non-verbal communication. Now, moving to the next one is about what kind of questions do I ask my clients? Okay. So when it comes to particular questions, there are two types of questions that you could ask your clients. One is called an open-ended question. The other one is called a closed-ended question. Now, open-ended questions are those questions. Now, Rivaj, I'm not too sure why you're not here. Students who are not on the cameras will be not given attendance and the assessment without any further discussion. Okay, I will not be able to discuss. It's a online session. Mainly, you're attending the online session only. Even in that, students having problems, they'll be either removed from the session or then they'll not be provided with the assessment. I hope that is clear. Prateek and I've got another student I just mentioned, Rivaj. Yeah, I'm not going to repeat this again. Okay. So open-ended questions are those questions that need explanation. For For example, one of your client had a appointment with the doctor yesterday, for example, and you saw them today, and you're discussing with them about the appointment. So you want to get as much as information as possible from that particular client regarding the doctor's appointment. That's when you ask open-ended question. Okay. Now, what would that question be? Can anyone tell me? What kind of open-ended question would you ask to make sure that you get the complete information from your client?
I think the first question that we need to ask is about the timing. When is the time?
No, appointment is already done. It's yesterday. It's past. So now
Okay.
you just need to know, what did the doctor say about your medical health or whatever.
Yes, we can ask the client, what are the prescriptions, what are the medicines doctor has prescribed you, and when we have to take, what time we have to take, in the morning, afternoon, before food, after food.
What you're giving is examples. Absolutely agreed. Yes. But a simple open-ended question would be, what did the doctor say about whatever problem, your arthritis? Example, she went for an arthritis appointment, for example.
Okay.
So what did the doctor say about your arthritis? Then she'll start saying the whole thing. He checked my blood pressure, he checked these, and then he has mentioned that I have to do a little bit of exercise. He has recommended a physio, multiple things. So she'll
So
give
in
you
a way,
a lot of
sorry.
information. She'll give a lot of information.
Okay.
Now, this lot of information that you got, everything goes into the notes. Okay. Now, when most of the time we ask open-ended questions because we want to get as much as information as possible from the client so that we can document it. Okay. But sometimes you may have to ask closed-ended questions. Okay. I'll give you some circumstances where you ask closed-ended questions. Is everyone clear with open-ended questions? I repeat that once again. Open-ended questions are those questions that need a lot of explanation or a brief descriptions. Okay. It cannot be answered in 1 or 2 words. Cannot be answered in 1 or 2 words. Whereas closed-ended questions are those questions that can be answered in 1 or 2 words. And when do we ask this kind of questions? For example, I used to have a client who had issues with communication in the morning. He's got Parkinson's. He used to shake in the morning, and then he used to have a stutter problem. That he goes like that. Yeah, he's not able to talk. Yeah, in the mornings especially, he's much more frustrated because he's not able to communicate. And he was one of my client who I was supposed to give a shower in the morning. So he wakes up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I have to give him a shower at 6:15. And then he goes and distributes the newspaper to the entire facility. That's his daily routine. So when I communicate with him in the morning, most of the time I used to ask him closed-ended questions. The reason behind that is because when you ask an open-ended question and he explains to you and he's not able to explain that because of his stutter problem, he gets anxious and anxiety, and he gets upset because he's not able to tell me what he wants to tell. Look, this is a perfect situation where you would prefer to ask a closed-ended question rather than open-ended question, because closed-ended question can be answered in one word: yes, no, good, bad. So that is an appropriate time to ask a closed-ended question. Similarly, there are multiple situations where you could ask a closed-ended question. For example, when you're communicating with your clients or when you're providing services to your clients, you need to ensure that you're taking a consent from the client. Okay. For example, you had to give a shower to Miss Mary. Okay. So you'll go to Miss Mary, you say, "Good morning, Miss Mary. Are you ready for the shower?" You don't really need to ask too many or brief description about this. Okay, a question that needs a brief description about this, because it's just a consent. So what do? You go to Mary and say, "Hey, Mary, how are you doing today?" And then you say, "Are you ready for the shower?" She'll say, "Yes," you go ahead with the shower. So when you're communicating with your clients, there are multiple things that you need to remember. Example, you need to make sure that you are working in a legal and ethical way, or your questions are in a legal and an ethical way. For example, I am asking a client for consent, but why? Because it's their right to refuse. So you have to keep this in mind when you're asking questions or when you're providing services to your clients. Again, privacy and confidentiality is one of the things that you need to understand. Now, you cannot go to the lounge and ask, how are you doing with your health? Okay. For example, you can't go to the client and ask about the health status in the dining area where 100 people can hear. That's not appropriate. It's not ethical. And also it's not legal because you're breaching the privacy of the person by asking those kind of questions. Is that clear for everyone? So when you're communicating, you need to also consider the ethical requirements and the legal requirements. For example, you do not hurt someone's feelings by asking, different kinds of questions, because that's your duty of care to ensure that you're maintaining the safety of your client at all times. Okay? And you're not harming them, whether it's a physical harm, whether it's a psychological harm. Is that clear for everyone?
Can you just repeat the last part, please?
So when you're asking your clients any kind of questions, you should not cause harm to them. For example, harm is not just a physical harm. For example, you're talking about against their culture, for example, against their culture. Wouldn't that cause harm to them? Psychologically, it would cause harm to them. Now, that's not ethical. Okay. And it's also illegal because you have a duty of care towards your clients to maintain their safety. Okay. And not harm them. So if you do ask questions like these and that could psychologically cause harm to them, then you're basically breaching that duty of care towards your client. Is that clear for everyone?
Yes.
So moving to the next one is about when it comes to, I'll be sure you have the PowerPoints, you guys can refer to the PowerPoints. When you're communicating with your clients, you also need to ensure that this is all about communication. That's open and closed-ended questions. You also need to ensure that you use some kind of strategies. Okay, for example, sometimes you may have to use summarizing techniques. Sometimes you may have to use reflecting techniques. Okay, now let's look at what are these techniques. Summarizing, it's very simple. We might be doing this every day. Okay, but as a part of this particular unit, you need to still understand how to communicate effectively. Summarizing involves taking the main idea from a piece of text or conversation and rewriting them in your own words. Now, you summarize something, which means that you are writing something, then you have to rewrite it in order to make sure that it's summarized. Okay. Now that's what, for example, I'll give you a simple example. When I give you some ideas or you have some notes related to this particular topic or any topic, what do I expect you to do? You read, you understand. You listen to me, understand. Okay. Then you rewrite in your own words. What does that show me? That shows me your knowledge. What did you understand of this topic? Is that clear for everyone? That's technically that is summarizing. Now, when it comes to verbal communication, it's the same thing again. Sometimes you might have to summarize and make it shorter. Okay. For example, I'll give you a simple example as to what we have discussed earlier. Your client told you multiple things that the doctor has done during the appointment. So in order to confirm what she said, you have understood all of it, you might repeat this back to her in a shorter form. Okay, so your doctor said that you have to have a physio appointment. That's a brief description about it. That's also a summarizing. Is that clear for everyone?
Yeah, that could be, we can say we are taking short notes so that we understand the client very clearly. We're taking down the points.
That's right. And at the same time, we are ensuring that the information given by the client is what you understood.
Understood is right.
Exactly. Is that clear for everyone? Okay. And sometimes you might have to summarize yourself too, because the client did not get what you said. Okay. So there are different ways of using summarizing, but that's summarizing. I believe everyone does it anyways. If someone has not understood, then you'll repeat that back to them. It's usual. In different words. For example, sometimes you have used a particular word they didn't understand, so you change that particular word and use something else. Now, the next technique is called reflecting. Reflecting is a process of paraphrasing, restating both feelings and words of the speaker. The purpose of reflecting is to allow the speaker to hear to their own thoughts and to focus on what they say and feel. For example, your client is saying something, you don't disturb them, because what's reflecting is telling you is a person is listening to themselves when they're talking. Okay, for example, when I am teaching you guys, I'm listening to myself and I'm understanding what did I cover, what I have to cover. The same way, your clients, when they're talking to you, then telling you something, they're focusing on something, they're listening to themselves and making sure that whatever they want to say, they have said that. Is that clear for everyone? That's reflecting. It allows the speaker to hear their own thoughts and to focus on what they say and feel.
Can you
Next
can you give us an example of how reflecting in this individual support? Can you quote an example, please?
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of examples. For example, if you're talking about, say your client, simple one, that you say your client has asked you, or you have asked a question to your client, what happened to you during your doctor's appointment? The client is telling you something. You're listening to the client, okay? When you're listening to the client attentively, that's also reflecting. Okay? Because you have these facial expressions or you're nodding your head, that's reflecting. Okay?
Yeah.
At the same time, the client is also listening to herself. Okay? And she is understanding while she's listening to herself of what she has told you. Sometimes, instead of physio, she said dietitian. Okay? Then what happens? She immediately changes that word. No, it's not dietitian. I mean to say physio.
Okay.
Okay. Why did this happen? Because she's listening to her own thoughts. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
That's reflecting. Okay. To show that the speaker that you are trying to perceive the world as they see it, that you are doing your best to understand the message. Now, this is exactly what I told. When someone is telling you something, you're listening to them. And that active listening itself shows that you are trying to understand and pursue the world as the client sees it. Okay? And under the process of reflecting, we do not stop the client from communication. Rather, we encourage them to continue talking, which means that you do not interrupt the client until they finish what they're saying. Okay? Reflecting does not involve you to ask questions. As I mentioned, we don't stop the client from talking. Let them talk and finish whatever they wanted to say. And we do not introduce a new topic, or it does not lead to a conversation into any other direction. Okay? That's about reflecting. And that's one of the techniques that you would be using when you're communicating with your clients. There are a few other things that we need to understand: motivational interviewing and coercive approach. And these are also some methods where coercive approach is not one of the approach that you would use. You should not be using the coercive approach. I repeat that once again. Motivational interviewing is a correct method or the best method, but coercive approach is one of the approach that you should not be using. But you need to understand what is that approach to make sure that you do not use it on your clients. Now, motivational interviewing is a method that works on facilitating and engaging intrinsic motivation within the client in order to change a behavior. Now, in simple words, what is motivational interviewing? Mahima, you focus on the class. Why are you looking around, my dear? I'll be asking you guys questions, guys. Please be attentive. Now, if I pick on someone and ask someone something, I'm going to say telling someone, that means that I've been observing for a while. Not just for a minute, okay? So motivational interviewing. What is a motivational interviewing? It is a method in which you're motivating a client to change a particular behavior. Okay, for example, your client is, whenever you're providing services to your client, he is being a bit agitated and he keeps throwing things deliberately, like, on the floor. just for nothing, but that's a behavior. Now, what kind of approach do you have towards that client? You encourage that client not to do those kind of things which are not acceptable. Again, you're not forcing them, you're encouraging them to change a particular behavior, which may not be an appropriate behavior. Is that clear for everyone?
Yes.
Next one is about coercive approach. Coercive approach is based on application of pressure on the adversary decision maker in order to force them to act in the direction desired by the attacker. In simple words, you cannot force someone to do something against their will. Example, you go to the client and you ask the client, okay? Example, a question, are you ready for the shower? Okay, the client says yes or no. That's a standard approach. Now, you cannot go to a client and say, hey, it's 7:30, it's time for you to have a shower. Come on, get into the shower now. Would you say that? Get into the shower right now. Is that a right approach?
No.
Definitely, it's not a right approach. That's what the coercive approach says, which is do not apply pressure on the client to take a decision in favor of what you want to do. Okay, is that clear for everyone?
As you said, we have to take the consent of the client. So first we need to ask the client.
In everything that you do.
Yes, in everything we do, first is to take the consent. We cannot put a pressure or we cannot be forceful. Let's go and take, as you said. That's
because it's illegal. Clients have a right to refuse a shower. For example, someone has refused a medication. It is acceptable by law because we have something called dignity of risk. What this dignity of risk says is every person has a right to take reasonable risk in their life. Sometimes that particular risk may cause harm to the client, but no one else. Example, alcohol is injurious to health. Are people allowed to have it? Yes. The same way, can a client refuse a medication? Yes. It may cause harm, but it's the client's risk and he wants to take that risk. For any reason. For example, the client might say, when I took that medication, I don't feel very well, so I don't want to take it today.
So
now,
in
issues
a way,
of concerns may be dealt by doctor, but as of now, the client said, no, you can't open his mouth and force and put the tablet in his mouth. That's not acceptable. Okay. Now, there is a risk involved that he might have some side effects because he's not taking that particular medication. Now, that risk is also legal because he has a right to dignity of risk. Is that clear for everyone?
Okay, I'm sorry, but yeah, that's a little bit far ahead. I'm thinking now if the client says that he doesn't want to take the medicine, he's not feeling very well after taking the medicine. So this we need to inform, or we need to mention in the note somewhere that.
And you have to inform the doctor too, because the client is complaining about the side effect of the medication.
Okay.
But as of now, since the client is saying no, you would stop it. You would withhold it.
Okay.
Yeah. Now again, it's a dignity of risk. That's called dignity of risk, right to dignity of risk. Now moving to the next one, collaboration and confrontation. Collaboration is working together, which we all know. We collaborate and work together to achieve a goal. What is a confrontation? Confrontation is an approach with an intention to argue. What did you just say? What did you just say? You know, people say, and then they start arguing. That's confrontation. Collaboration, you're working together to achieve something. Now, these are some of the techniques that we use in order to overcome communication difficulties. I want everyone to just read through. Example, one of the things that we didn't talk about is communication aids. We will talk about that in a minute. Just go through this for now. Speaking slowly and clearly, maintaining normal volume, paraphrasing, prioritizing and sequencing your instructions, using clear and simple language, responding appropriate to emotions, providing opportunity for questioning and clarification. For example, a client is crying. Will you go and ask, how are you? Is it appropriate to go and ask someone who is crying? You can see she's crying.
Right.
She's upset about something. She's sad about something. Now, asking appropriate question at appropriate time is very important. Okay. Use of communication aids. For example, you have a client who has hearing deficit. They have issues with hearing. Then you need to make sure that before you communicate with this particular client, make sure that they have the communication aids, which is hearing aid in the ear, before you start communicating with them, because you know that they have that problem. They can't hear you. And some of the other things that you may have to remember is if a client has a dominant side, for example, they can hear well with the right side of the ear, you go and stand on the right-hand side or sit on the right-hand side when you're communicating with that particular client to make sure that your communication is effective. Is that clear for everyone?
Yes.
Now, how do you collaborate with colleagues? Now, when we're talking about collaboration with colleagues, just give me 1 second, guys. When you're talking about collaboration with colleagues, our job as a personal care assistant does require us to work as a team. For example, I have, say, Ria, I have Mahima, I have, say, Jessica. These 3 staff members are working together on a particular day. Say they're doing a morning shift, okay? And they've got 5 residents each. Ria has 5 residents, Mahima has 5 residents, and Jessica has 5 residents. Jessica has all 5 residents who are mainly independent, and they might need 1 person's support, only 1 staff member to support. Whereas Ria and Mahima, they need to work together because they both have 2 high care residents each. When I say high care, what it means is 1 person cannot provide the service. They need to work together in order to provide the service because they might be using a machine. Okay. Now they need a proper planning now. For example, okay, Ria is starting at 7 and Mahima is also starting at 7. They both need to communicate effectively in order to plan the day and finish the job on time. Example, Ria might say, hey, Mahima, I'm happy to attend, say, Miss Mary, high care, and Frank, high care, at 9 and 9:30. Would that suit you? Because she has to come and help. Now, this is how you collaborate. This is how you communicate. This is how you plan your day. Apart from that, I'll go for break at 10 o'clock. Is that okay? Or what time do you want to go for break? Communication again. Because you all can't go for break at once, leaving your clients by themselves. So breaks also need planning. Okay. And they also have to communicate with Jessica because breaks, you need to plan together. Because at any given point of time, you should have 2 staff members on the floor. So how do you ensure that? Sometimes the supervisors don't give you this time. They ask you to manage yourself. So you have to communicate. And at the same time, because you are not there on the floor, you went for a break. One of your client is buzzing, needs some help. Mahima or Jessica know that you're not on the floor, so they have to go and attend. Now, if you don't communicate with them and you just go for a break at 10 o'clock, no one knows where you are. Is that clear for everyone?
Yes.
Any questions? And other things, collaborating with colleagues. Example, there's one thing that you need to follow when you are collaborating, communicating with your colleagues or management. When they're talking about colleagues, it includes your management, okay? Managers are also colleagues, in other words, yes. They might be higher level, but they're still your colleagues. Now, you need to understand the organization organization chart, in order to communicate effectively and report things. So how do you communicate effectively and report things in case if there is something that you need to report? Now, to make sure that you understand the reporting procedure and communication, when it comes to reporting, you need to understand the hierarchy of the organization. Now, I want everyone to write this down in the form of a flow chart, Now, the head of the organization, I'm just giving you a generic one. Every organization is different again. I'm just giving you a standard template. The head of the organization is the chief executive officer, who is the head. Then under chief executive officers, you have different directors. Under chief executive officer, you have directors. Under directors, you have regional managers. Under regional managers, you have general managers. Under general managers, you have care managers.
Care managers?
Care managers. Care. Under general managers, you have care managers. Care managers, and under care managers, you have registered nurses.
I'm sorry, Rakesh. It's a here or care? I'm sorry, I didn't
It's
get
a
that.
care.
Care.
C-A-R-E, care. It's care manager. Under care managers, you have registered nurses. Under registered nurses, we have enrolled, but I'm not going to talk much about enrolled nurses. Under registered nurses, it's personal care assistants. Personal care assistant. Now, I repeat that once again. Yeah, the head of the organization is the chief executive officer. Then you have the directors.
Yes.
Under directors, you have regional managers, then general managers, then the care managers, then you have registered nurses and the personal care assistant. Now, I am the personal care assistant. We'll talk about our role. That's what you're doing. You are the personal care assistant. So as a personal care assistant, if you had to report something, who do you report it to? I'll follow this hierarchy of management. I'll go to my registered nurse. I'll report it to my registered nurse, who is, in other words, my direct supervisor. Now, if she didn't act on something and there's a delay and it's causing problems or they're not following it up, then you may go to the next level, which is your care manager. Now, you're not able to resolve an issue there, then you move on to the next step, who is your general manager. Upon not resolving issues, then you move forward to the next one, which is regional manager, director, and the chief executive officer. Now, if you have a small problem, you don't go straight to the chief executive officer. That's what I'm trying to say here. There is a way how you communicate and who you communicate and who you report. Because if you go and say, Miss Mary's own dressing is not done to the chief executive officer, he'll say, what do you mean? What do I do with it? Go and talk to your supervisor about it, because it's not appropriate to go to the chief executive officer. You might get to that stage when the wound is being infected, you have followed it up with everyone, but no one is doing anything. Then maybe it's appropriate. But to start with, you have to contact your supervisor, no one else. Is that clear for everyone? Now, moving to the next one, there are different potential constraints to the communication. Different potential constraints to the communication. And how do we address these potential constraints? Let's discuss that. Now, what are some of the potential constraints to the communication? In other words, what are some of the reasons you're not able to effectively communicate with the client? What do you think would be the reasons be? Any answers from anyone? What do you think the reasons be? Why are you not able to communicate with your client effectively? Any reasons?
I think the first reason is the language barrier.
Okay, when there is a language barrier, we'll talk about individual constraints, and also we have to talk about the strategies on how to address them. And I want everyone to really write them down as much as possible or remember them, because whatever I'm discussing, end of the day, you'll have questions on them. Remember that. Okay. So language barrier, and how do I address this? Language barrier is when someone is not able to communicate in a particular language. Or for example, they're not able to talk in English. Okay, there's a language barrier. Now, what do I do in order to address this particular issue? In an aged care, you have a list of words written in different languages. For example, you have a client who is from Italian background. They don't speak English, example. So you have a list of words that are written in English. For example, good morning, lunch, breakfast. They're written in English, and they're also written in their language, but they're written in English. Okay, is that clear for everyone? So you refer to those words, and you use those words when you're communicating with those clients who have a language barrier. Now, you might use an interpreter interpreter is not professional interpreter, because just to ask, would you like to have a shower? You don't need a professional interpreter for that. You might use the list of words, or if the client needs to further discuss about something, you might ask a staff member who speaks the similar or same language to help you out. Okay. And apart from that, you can also use visualization techniques. For example, you might use a cue card, you might show an image to communicate with the client, and your body language. For example, you have to ask a client, are you hungry? Or would you like to go for lunch? Or, so how do you do that? You're hungry is, you show, are you ready for lunch? You show lunch, yeah? And then, or you tap on your tummy, are you hungry? That's non-verbal, okay? And it's an effective way of communicating. And if you have a client who are able to talk in English, but not very great with English, and they can understand if you tell them slowly, then you have to reduce your speed of your speech and speak as slowly as possible so that they can understand. Okay. So depending on the client's issues, you will be modifying your communication. Okay. Now the next thing is next constraint. Any other constraints?
Yeah, one thing, can I ask you?
Yeah.
As you said, the body language, we can use certain actions, as you said, if the client hungry. So you were saying like this. So can we do an action like this? Or you
Now,
said of the tummy?
when I say action like that, where are you from, Jyoti?
India.
So that's it. See, we prefer to show something like this. People
Yeah.
feel like they don't understand.
Yes. That's what I wanted to
They
check.
understand fork,
Yes.
knife.
Knife.
spoon.
Yes. Yep.
So depending on the culture, if you're talking to an Indian, for example, Indian Sri Lankan, yeah, that's fine.
Yes. So that's what I wanted to check. Do we have a set of body language things?
Now
do
we don't have
need
any
to learn?
set of
or-
rules.
Okay.
There are no rules. It all
Okay.
depends on the client.
Okay.
As you said, in India, you might, if you go and say what you want to eat, you're saying, what do you mean like this?
Yeah. Yes.
That's not appropriate for Indians. Okay, because they don't prefer not everyone eats with fork and knife.
Yes. Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
It depends. But usually, yes, if they're in Australia, they understand, because they have been here for too long. That's why they're in the aged care, obviously. Even people who don't speak in English, they understand what you mean by that.
Okay, so that's what I
Because
wanted to
culturally they have
clarify,
learned it.
because there are certain things that people coming from a different cultural background, they have own hand actions or the body actions, so it's better.
So on. Yes, I understand. But the thing is, if they're in the aged care, imagine if they're in the aged care, that means that they have lived in Australia for at least 30 to 40 years, not less than that.
Yeah.
So someone who's been culturally exposed for last 40 years, that's absolutely fine. They should be able to understand what you're trying to say. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So we use a standard one. We don't have any
Yes.
special one, but there's nothing wrong, because we
Okay.
have to be culturally appropriate.
Yes.
whatever is needed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, moving to the next one, other constraint to communication is communication aids, where people have issues like disability. They're not able to hear you because they have a hearing deficit. They're able to not see you because they only can see you when they wear glasses.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, when you have these kind of constraints, make sure that you're wearing hearing aids or glasses before you start communicating with that particular client. Okay. Now, the next one is other constraints of communication could be sometimes emotions are also constraints to communication. Example, you go to a client, the client is crying. Now, when the client is crying and she's telling you something, sometimes you don't understand because the person is crying and telling you things at the same time. Is that clear for everyone? That is also a problem when it comes to communication. Now, what do? Give them a tissue, sit down with them, calm them down, and then you ask a question. That's how you address the communication constraint when it comes to emotions, emotional state, in other words. Okay. Now, other things that could be that could also be considered as a potential constraints. One is background noises. Like TV is too loud. The TV is too loud. Can you hear what the client is saying? Can client hear what you're saying? Maybe no. So what do? Make sure that you put the volume down first before you start communicating. Okay. So depending on the constraint, you might have to address that constraint in order to ensure that your communication is effective with your client. Is that clear for everyone?
Yes.
Now, the next thing that I'm going to discuss about is what kind of documentation do we complete? And this is a very standard one, guys. I will be showing this particular one in different units, because any unit that you may do, and when it comes to documentation, any unit that you may do, this is a standard documentation that you complete in an aged care. So whenever you come across, if you understand this particular documentation, you almost in all units, whenever you have a question related to documentation, this particular document will help you to answer that question. Because the documents are very limited when it comes to a personal care assistant. When you whatever documents that you're completing, we have a handful of documents that we complete. We're not like nurses. We don't have 100 or 1,000 things to do when it comes to documentation. We are assisting our clients, and those things we document. That's it. Nothing beyond that. Nurses have different requirements from government and so on. We don't. We have straight to the point. Did I give a shower to the client? Yes, I did. I go tick. Yes, I gave a shower. Did the client go to the toilet? Yes, he went to the toilet. Tick it off. Done. Our documentation is much more simpler. For nurses, they have a detailed documentation on everything that they do, because there are legal requirements for nurses. We don't really have that. We have legal requirements, but they're limited. Okay. So if you understand this one, it's pretty much, I'll be showing you multiple times anyways, but just keep it simple that these are the documents that you complete. These are some of the standard documents that you would complete most of the time. Under any exceptional circumstances, maybe you'll complete something else, but most of the time, these are the documents that you complete in an aged care. And this is the purpose of that particular document. And this is when you report to your supervisor. Okay, these are different documentations. This is the purpose, and this is when you report. I'll quickly go through them. Bowel chart. It helps us to monitor the bowel movement of the client. Has a client been to the toilet? We record every shift to make sure that, the client doesn't have any issues with bowel movement. Now, when do you report to supervisor? If the client has not been to the toilet for more than 2 days. When do you report? If the client has not been to the toilet for more than 2 days. How do I know when the client has not been? You don't have to
refer to the report or the chart that was prepared yesterday. The person who was helping, the assistant who has done it.
Now, I do not expect anyone talking, guys. Really, when not Jyoti, I'm not talking to you. I'm saying other people who are on mute, but they're talking to the family members. I'm not accepting it. I want you to focus on this unit, please. You got 2 hours. In 2 hours, I don't want any distractions that you may have, because these kind of things can put you into trouble if you don't understand them. Okay. Now, yes, absolutely right what you said, Jyoti. So, for example, I've got 6 staff members who have worked over the period of 2 days. I've got Sapna, Pavitra, Kim, Tripti, Rakesh, and someone else. 6 of them have worked morning, afternoon, and night. They all have ticked off that the client has not been to the toilet. So the person who comes on the 7th shift has seen that this person has not been to the toilet. For example, Sukhjit came for this 7th shift, and she has observed that last 6 shifts, in other words, 2 days, the client has not been to the toilet. Now she has to report it to the supervisor, because the client might be having issues with the constipation, or maybe the client is not feeling well. We have to check. Our job, again, we don't have to worry about what supervisor is going to do here. I'm going to be worried about, I have observed that it's more than 2 days. I will have to report it. Let supervisor do whatever he wants. Is that clear for everyone?
Yes.
Because we are not doctors, we are not nurses. We can't really resolve this problem, but we can definitely report this problem. Okay. Next one, shower. We record if the client had a shower or not. Okay. If the client said, I don't want to have a shower, you go and report it to the supervisor, and also tell the supervisor that you have requested the client has requested for a wash. You gave him a wash, or the client has even refused for a wash. These things will be reported to supervisor. Okay. Behaviors. Any behaviors that you may come across, you'll document it in the behavior chart. Behavior. For example, the client is being aggressive, the client is spitting, the client is hitting. All of those will go into the behavior chart, and then we report it to the supervisor, especially if it's verbal and physical aggression. In these circumstances, you must report it. All incidents are reported through incident reports. What are some of the incidents that you report in the incident report and supervisor? All incidents are reported to supervisor, no questions about it. I believe everyone understands that. All incidents are reported to supervisor and they're documented in the incident reports. Now, some of these incidents include falls, abuses, neglect, physical aggression, or any kind of injuries. Hourly monitoring. Now, some clients have a tendency to abscond, which means the clients might just leave the facility without telling anyone. In other words, your client is missing. He left the facility without telling anyone. So these kind of clients who are on high risk of absconding, what we do is we monitor them every hourly to see and know whereabouts of the client. And when you're monitoring them, you might even write what kind of clothing are they wearing and where are they. For example, a client is wearing a blue shirt and a black pants and a black shoes. He's in the lounge. Now, every hour you have to write what they're wearing and whereabouts are they. Because why you're documenting about what they're wearing, for example, you check that 12 o'clock, he was there in the lounge. At 1 o'clock, he's missing. You try to find him all over the facility, you can't find him. Now, to report to the police, they'll ask you, the first question is, you have a photo of the client. You might send the photo, that's fine. What is he wearing? You should be able to tell them. A blue shirt, black pants, and the black shoes. Is that clear for everyone?
Yes.
Now, in case if you can't find the client, you'll obviously tell the supervisor because they have to report it to the police to find this person. Now, progress notes, daily notes, or case notes, these are the different terms that we use, but they're all daily notes, okay? Anything that you do for the client is recorded in the progress notes. It's a daily notes. Now, any issues among anything will be reported to supervisor. Food and fluid chart. This will help us to monitor the food and fluid intake. How much is the client eating? How much is the client drinking? This is not a regular document that you complete, but if a client is gaining too much weight or losing too much weight, then we might have this kind of document to make sure that we monitor and give a particular data to the dietitian. Exactly. Right? That's your food and fluid chart. And if the client refuses the meal, you'll tell the client, you'll tell the supervisor. Sleep assessment, this will help us to know the sleep patterns of the client. How much is he sleeping? And then if the client is not having enough sleep, then you'll let the supervisor know about it. Hazard report forms, if you come across any hazards, you'll report it to supervisor and you complete the hazard report form. Is everyone clear with this? I repeat this, everyone, please take a screenshot of this one. A screenshot or a image picture, photo. Took a screenshot. Now, when it comes to this one, again, I'm mentioning it very clearly. This is the documentation that you complete. This is the purpose of the documentation. And this is when you report it to supervisor on each of these issues. Okay. Now that covers your topic number 4 and topic number 5. Okay. Topic number 4 and topic number 5. The last topic is about continuous improvement. Okay. How can you contribute to the continuous improvement of your organization? How do you contribute to the continuous improvement of your organization? When it comes to the continuous improvement of the organization, I, as a personal care assistant, I should be reading the policies and procedures on a regular basis. I repeat that once again. As a personal care assistant, I am supposed to read the policies and procedures on a regular basis and follow them in my work activities. Okay. For example, you have to take a consent from the client before you provide the service. That is written in the policies and procedures. If there is an incident, what do you do? It's written in the policies and procedures. So we read them on a regular basis and we implement it. Now that automatically contributes to the continuous improvement of the organization. But sometimes in these policies and procedures, you may have issues. Example, a policy says that, I'll give you a rough example of one of the mistakes. Now, for example, a policy says for COVID-19, you need to ensure that you wear an apron. Now, apron is not an appropriate thing to wear as a PPE. It must be a gown. Now, you read this particular policy and you see that it's not written properly and it's not appropriate. Then you'll go and report it to supervisor to request them to review and update. Is that clear?
Yes.
Now, that's how you can contribute to the continuous improvement of the organization. Sometimes a particular policy is not available, or there is no procedure on it. For example, someone is giving you $100, example, as a gift. You went and started looking into the organization policies and procedures to see what does the gift policy say. And you can't even find a gift policy. Now you go and tell your supervisor, there is no gift policy. Can we have a new policy written, please? Is that clear?
Okay.
Sir, I want to say something.
Yeah.
I just received an email from Dilini Madhurangani. She said she wants to join the link, but she doesn't have the link.
Sorry,
Yes,
I'm sorry. Yeah. I
Uh,
did it now. Yeah.
all right.
I couldn't find password and the link. That's why.
Okay.
Sorry for disturb.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank
Right.
you.
So thank you, guys. So I hope that's clear. So that's how you contribute to the continuous improvement. Sometimes you learn about some technologies as well. Okay. For example, as a person, I believe everyone understands what a professional development is. Professional development, whatever work you do. For example, you're working as an accountant. So what do you do as an accountant? You need to make sure that you know what are the recent updates in the industry. Okay. For example, recently I heard that they're going to increase superannuation. Percentage is going to increase. Okay. I heard about it. I don't know full information, but I heard about it. Now, if I'm an accountant, I have to make sure that I do my professional development to know what exactly the change is. Okay. So that I can assist my clients. Yeah. So that's professional development. I'm trying to explain. I'm not talking about accounting here. I'm trying to explain what a professional development is.
Or we can say it's a development to increase the productivity, to help or assess the clients in a much better way.
Yes. So it's a professional development. Okay. Whether it's your client is an elderly client, whether it's a client who is a accounting client or whatever. Okay. Professional development is basically you're gaining additional knowledge in the current industry to make sure that you provide better services in general meaning. So for a personal care assistant, what is a professional development? For example, I go for a manual handling training. A manual handling training every year you have to do. Now this time went for manual handling training with some college or someone, and they told me about this new machine that was introduced, and it is very helpful. Now I think that machine will be able to assist 10 of my clients who I'm assisting every day in this aged care. Now, what do? I gain knowledge about a new technology. I go and talk to my supervisor about it. Tell him, hey, I heard about this particular new machine. Why don't we buy one? Because it's going to help our all 10 clients. And it's going to be a good idea to have this machine. Now, that is a part of continuous improvement. If you have any issues, any concerns in your work activities, and you raise those issues with your supervisor, that is also contribution to the continuous improvement. Now, when you're assisting your clients, you're having difficulties in some activities. For example, you have to empty a urine bag, example, And there are different urine bags. Sometimes you are really struggling with that urine bag because you don't know how to do it. Now, in other words, you don't have a knowledge or skill related to a particular activity. Now, what do? I'll ask my manager for training. Give me training, please, because I don't know how to do it. I'm struggling with this. Now, that asking for training and going for training and gaining your knowledge is also part of continuous improvement of yourself. And when you improve, your organization automatically improves. Is that clear for everyone?
Yes.
So these are the different things that you have for this particular topic. I believe we have discussed everything that is needed.
Yes.
Now I request everyone to please send me your email addresses in public chat. Everyone, please send me email addresses in public chat. And one other thing I wanted to mention in today's session very clearly, moving forward, I will be very strict because I've received multiple complaints from Nisha. Last week, she has taken a session with you guys for unit number 2. I have received a complaint that students are not being on the camera, students are doing something else, they're in the train, they're somewhere else. Moving forward from next session, I will not be allowing the clients who are students who are driving, definitely no. Now, Gladys, I know you sit in the car, you're not driving, I know that. That's a different story. Yeah. If you're driving, you will not be allowed. If you're in the train, you will not be allowed. Okay. For 2 hours, you don't have to explain anything to me. You just have to dedicate those 2 hours to the class. Okay. If someone is not concentrating, I'm not providing assessment because end of the day, they can't write the answers. It's better for them to re-attend the session. And these moving forward, it's going to be a very strict thing. And mainly those students who join the session after 9:10, some students are joining at 10 o'clock. Hello, your session starts at 9. Why are we joining at 10? Some are joining at 9:40. Why? I'm not going to allow those students anymore into the session because your session starts at 9 and you're finishing usually by 11:30 maximum. Why do you need any kind of additional explanations on this? For 2 hours, you want to explain your problem again? Are you serious? Can you really finish this course? So please, guys, moving forward from next week, I'm going to be very strict with these things that I've discussed right now. You guys can have a 10 minutes break while I send you the assessment. I'll see you at 10:15. All right, guys, I'll see you at 10:15. Welcome back, everyone. Rivaj, you have given me incorrect email address. You might not have received assessment because you gave me an incorrect email address. Please send an email once again, your email address once again. Right, guys, I'm going to go through the assessment and roughly give you an idea of how to complete your responses. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Now, Maria, if you do not attend the session, you do not get the assessment, so you just continue with this week. That should be fine. Right. So that's your assessment for unit number 3. Make sure to write your name, your student ID. If you have a folder number, mention it. If you don't have one, leave it blank. The assessment is due on the next Saturday, which is the 3rd of June. 3rd of June. Now, question 1, for this task, you are to write an information guide for new employees about communicating effectively in the health and community service industry. In your guide, you will need to include the information on the following topics. Now, these are all the topics that I have discussed. The topic number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. These are the 6 topics that I have discussed. Example, I'll roughly give you an idea on all of them. Effectively communicate. How do you effectively communicate? Speaking slowly, clearly, and so on. And then what kind of questions do you ask and when do you ask those questions? Okay. Now, collaborating with colleagues, you should have a proper planning and you need to make sure that your communication is open, because you need to make sure that you are discussing about how you're going to plan the day with the colleague. How are you going to coordinate with the colleagues in order to achieve your activities for the day? That's collaborating with colleagues. Whether it's about the time frames, whether it's about a cooperative approach where you're assisting a client who is a high care client, multiple things go under this collaborating with colleagues. Constraints to communication. What are some of the constraints and how do you address them? For example, there's a language barrier, there's a background noise, there's a disability. How do you address them? You have to write a strategy as well. Reporting problems identified at work in the workplace and workplace documentation and correspondence. I have already showed you this particular document, which tells you about what do you report to supervisor and what documents do you complete and what is the purpose of that document. So that covers your reporting, documentation, and the purpose of the documentation. And when do you report? Is that clear for everyone?
Yes.
Now, moving to the next one, how do you contribute to the continuous improvement of the organization? Okay, continuous improvement participation, or how can you contribute to the organization's continuous improvement? Okay, now under this particular question, as we have discussed earlier, you need to do your professional development in order to grow your knowledge. And when you're doing professional development, if you come across any new technologies and any new ideas that could assist your organization to grow in providing quality services to your clients, then you'll tell or share that information with your supervisors. And you also have to follow the policies and procedures of the organization. And in these policies and procedures, if you identify any gaps, you let your supervisors know about it. And also, as a part of your responsibility, if you come across any issues or concerns, you will raise those issues and concerns with your supervisor so that those issues are addressed on a timely manner, and we will be able to they will be like as a team, we will be able to assist in smooth operation of an organization. These are all part of continuous improvement. Is that clear for everyone? Now, since this particular topic itself, this particular question itself covers all of your topics, now moving forward, whatever we discuss will be a part of this question anyways. Because as I mentioned earlier, you have 6 topics for this particular unit, and they have asked you already to write about all 6 topics in this question. Okay, so moving forward, most of the things will be related to what we have discussed here, most of the things. Some will be detailed and some will not be very detailed, but yeah, it will be part of that though. Next question, 2A. When communicating with others in the community sector, what legislations and ethical considerations need to be made? What are some of the things that you need to remember when you're communicating, okay? And what legislations that you need to remember, or what ethical considerations do you should have when you're communicating, okay? For example, you need to make sure that you follow Privacy Act 1988. You need to make sure that you adhere to the Aged Care Act 1997. You need to remember that elderly people have rights. So you need to make sure that Aged Care Charter of Rights are considered. Yeah. Aged Care Standards. Yeah. Aged Care Standards. Duty of care. Dignity of risk. Confidentiality. Those are some of the legal and ethical considerations that you need to consider when you are communicating with anyone at workplace. All right. Is that clear for everyone? Legislations and ethical considerations. Now, question B, where might you locate information on the application of legal and ethical aspects of health and community services? So where will you find the information? It's a kind of a repetitive question. Where will you find the information? We can refer to the legislations, different legislations. Government websites. Organizations, policies and procedures. Aged care manual. Charter of Aged Care Rights.
What is it?
The same rights that we have discussed earlier. Aged Care Charter of Rights. It's also called as Charter of Aged Care Rights. Let's see. It's similar one. This goes here. It also goes there too. And where else do you think you can find this information? Where can you find more information about the application of legal and ethical aspects? Any answers? At least give me one answer, guys. Where else can you find?
Community websites.
Yeah, okay. Anything else? And the organizations, we have an next unit coming up about legal and ethical. We'll discuss much more about it. Code of conduct. We have the organization. Code of ethics. Code of practice. So these are some things to consider. Next question. How can you ensure that you're making ethical decisions at all times? Now, I'll give you a simple example when we're talking about ethical decisions. Just give me 1 second. Let me think about an example. All right. One of the client is giving you, say, a gift voucher, Myers, a gift voucher of $50. Okay. Now, there's nothing to do with legality here. It's more ethical, okay? Client is giving you a gift for your service. Now, can I accept this gift or not? I don't know. Where there is a confusion. For example, you work as a waiter, you can accept a tip for $50, $100, $1,000 too. Someone gives it, you can take it. In an aged care, am I allowed to? I don't know. Ethical. Is it correct or not? So how do you make sure that you're taking the right decision when it comes to ethics? Okay. Now, ethics are based on human rights and wrongs in general. Okay. But to make sure that I'm doing the right thing, what can I do in this situation is a question. How do you make sure that you take an ethical decision? Now, when someone is giving you something, Tui Dang,
Yes.
I have multiple times told you to be on mute. Even before, when I referred to put on mute, I have mentioned you to put yourself on mute because you have been continuously talking to the family members.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Can you please put yourself on mute? Now, so in this situation, what do? Number one, I'll go and read my policies and procedures. So the same thing again, I'm referring to this question itself. How do you make sure that you take ethical decisions? In order to make sure that I take ethical decisions at all times, I will go and check my policies and procedures on that particular ethical issue that may have arisen. If the policy and procedure guides me, that's okay. I'll follow that particular policy. If it doesn't have much information or it doesn't have any clear directions on what to do, and if I am not sure on what decision to take, then I'll contact my supervisor. Now, two things that we're doing here, once again. When it comes to ethical decisions, I'll refer to the policies and procedures to check what to do, what is the right thing to do. Okay. If I have clear directions, I'll follow those directions as per the policies. But if I don't have any directions from the policies or it's not clear in the policies and procedures, I'll contact my supervisor to ensure that I take an ethical and correct decision. In other words, you go and check about policy on gift. There is nothing written. Okay. Or it says you cannot accept gifts. Then you can't take it easy. If it doesn't say much information, it says that you can accept a box of chocolates. Then it's not a box of chocolates, so you can't accept it. Or it doesn't say anything, it's very vague, that gift policy. It's not very clear. Then you're not sure about what to do. You go to the supervisor. Is that clear for everyone?
Yes.
Next question. What are the influences on communication? In other words, your question E. Am I right? No, we are on D, sorry. What is the difference between motivational interviewing and coercive approach? A motivational interviewing is a method where you are encouraging or motivating a person to change a particular behavior. Whereas a coercive approach is an approach that applies pressure on the client to take a decision in favor of the attacker. Now, this information that I'm telling you now, you may not be able to write it, and I don't expect you to write it anyways, but you can refer to your PowerPoints to guide yourself, okay? Now, moving to the next one, what are the influences on communication? Your question number 1 is, question number 2E. Okay, question number 2E, and your question number 20. 2E, question number 20. Are similar. Question 2E and question 20 are similar. Now, in question 2E, what they're asking, what are the influences on communication? What in question 20, they're asking what are the potential constraints of communication? Influences of communication, what are the constraints or influences on communication? Disability, language barrier, cultural barrier,
Background noises,
background noises,
emotions,
emotional state, literacy levels. Those are some of the issues and concerns that you may. You just need to list them out, guys. Now, question F. Question F. Why are grammar, speed, and pronunciation for verbal communication important? Why do you think grammar, speed, and pronunciation in verbal communication are important? Any answers?
So that we can convey our message clearly.
Because it helps us to convey or get the message across to the other party accurately and concisely. By using proper speed, pronunciation, and grammar, we will be able to send the message across to the other party accurately and concisely. Next question. Why is non-verbal communication important to use? Why do you think we have to use non-verbal communication when you're able to actually communicate verbally? Sometimes words alone may not make the full sense. But when you use the non-verbal communication with verbal communication, it also states your feelings, and it often helps you to communicate effectively.
Better way.
I hope that's clear for everyone. Next question. This particular question is a bit, it's not hard. It's more about you understanding it. Choose a community service organization that you're familiar with and discuss the structure, functions, and interrelationship they have. Now, you have to choose a community service organization. In simple words, choose an aged care. Choose an aged care. And you have to write about the organization structure. You know how I told you about the CEO and so on. But I give you a standard example. Every organization has a different organization structure. You go to their websites, or you refer to the manuals if you work in any organization. Example I'm giving you. Okay. So you choose one organization, go to the website, try to find this information. Okay. Because this is a research topic. There's no standard answer for this because it depends on which organization you have chosen. What is the structure? What are the roles and responsibilities of the people who are involved? It's a long question. So you need to write all of this information into this particular question. Okay. I believe everyone is clear with it. If you're not sure, please ask. If you're still unclear about something, please ask. The next question is, what digital media is often used in the community service sector? What is the digital media that we use in the aged care community services? And how is it used? What digital media do we use? Emails. Everyone knows why we use emails? What is the purpose of using emails? How does it help? We can send an email to the doctor. We can send an email to the clients. We can send an email to the carers or family members, staff members. It helps in communication, basically. Then you have the website, web or website. It has full information about the services that we provide. And we have social media, which tells about what activities are we doing in an organization. It also helps in advertising about the organization. And we have different applications to update or to document about a client, progress of the client. Documentation can be maintained in these applications. We might use laptops or tablets or iPads for documentation again. Is that clear for everyone? And apart from that, we use buzzers to communicate or call for help. Either the client can call for help, or sometimes we as a staff member, we can call for help from another staff member using a buzzer. Is that clear for everyone?
Yes.
Next question. What are the different categories of communication? Verbal and non-verbal. You just have to mention what are verbal communication, what is included under verbal communication, and what is included under non-verbal communication. Next question. What can you do to communicate effectively? This is similar to your question number 1A. Question 1A. You have to effectively communicate with people. Question 5. Write 2 examples of open-ended question, 2 examples of closed-ended questions. Example, open-ended question. What did the doctor say during your appointment? Example. What are your plans for tomorrow? Example. Example. No one is writing my answers, please. If you write my answers, I put it as plagiarism. I'm giving you an idea only. Now, close-ended questions. Would you like to go for a shower? You just have to write 2 examples. Now, question 6 is similar to your question 1C. Collaborate with colleagues effectively, the planning and stuff. And question 7. Now, question 7, a lot of people write whatever they want here. And this is exactly what shows me who is concentrating in this class. It's very clear. List 6 examples of industry terminology that you may use. 6 examples of industry terminology. Now tell me, guys, I'll give you some examples, which one is correct and which one is wrong. All I want you to do is, I'll give you some examples of industry terminology. You tell me if it's correct or not. Is it appropriate to use in an aged care or not? When you're communicating with people. Whiteboard.
Yes.
Whiteboard, do we use that? Whiteboard is a right term that we use in an aged care? Do you think it's an industry terminology? A whiteboard? A whiteboard. Do you go to your supervisors and say, my client is playing with the whiteboard?
No.
You know why people write whiteboard? Because the Google gave the answer. 6 industry terminology, because Google doesn't understand that you are an aged care student. Google only understands that you want some industry terminology. It's giving you random answers. A pen. Pen is an industry terminology. No. Personal protective equipment.
Yes.
Yes.
Swelling.
Yes.
A bruise.
Yes.
Laceration. Cut.
Yes.
Yes. Pain. A complaint of pain.
Yes,
Yes.
definitely yes.
Now, these are the things that you have to list here, not whiteboard, paper, pen, khakis. Industry terminology. Yeah? Does it make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
I hope you guys are clear with that. I can give you a few examples if you want. Additional to what I mentioned earlier, abuse, neglect, swelling, laceration, elevation. Elevation is raising your legs up, elevating your legs up, elevation. Personal protective equipments. Heat packs, or hot pack. Mobility, walking, mobility. Unsteady gait. Unsteady gait. Gait is G-A-I-T. Unsteady gait is a person who is not stable when they're walking. Unsteady gait, G-A-I-T, not G-A-T-E, okay? Bowel movement, B-O-W-E-L, movement. UTI, urinary tract infection, urinary tract infection. BO, we use this kind of words anyways in aged care. BO means bowels opened. BNO, bowels not opened. Incontinent. Continent. Kylie. I'll give you a little bit of explanation anyways. Incontinent means people who do not have a control over their bowel or bladder. Continent means people who have control over their bowel and bladder. Kylie, it's a thing that we put on the bed so that we know when they pass urine, the bed doesn't get wet. Kylie, yeah? Is that clear for everyone? I'll show it to you in different units, depending on the unit, which unit you're doing, okay? Shower chair, maybe, yes. Okay, you got some ideas here? Now, next question is about, again, this question is repetitive. What can you do to address the communication constraints? Similar to your question number 1C. How do you handle conflict at workplace? If you have a conflict at workplace, how do you handle it? Conflict at work, try 2 strategies. Understand the situation, acknowledge the problem, be patient, organize a meeting to discuss about the problem and find an appropriate solution. So any 2 of them strategies, okay? Which is just not a tough question. If you have a conflict at workplace, how do you deal with it? We focus on the problem, try to find a solution, organize a meeting and discuss with the other party, acknowledge the problem, understand the situation, offer apology. Those kind of things can go here. Question number 10, you need to write 2 pieces of legislation, 2 legislations. Example, Aged Care Act, 1997, Privacy Act, 1988, Work Health and Safety Act, 2004, Community Welfare Act, 1987, any 2. Just the legislation, you don't have to explain. You don't have to explain.
What was the 1988 Welfare Act?
Privacy Act, 1988, Community Welfare Act, 1987. Sometimes I'm really quick because I don't want people to write down. Because if everyone writes the same thing, it's going to be plagiarism. So that's why I don't want to be very detailed. I just be quick so people can get a couple of them. That's it. Next question. Who should you report any unresolved conflicts? Who do you report to, guys? Supervisors, managers, and HR. Human Resource Officer. Supervisors, managers, and HR. Your question number 12 is similar to your question number 1F. How can you contribute to the continuous improvement of the organization? They have asked in a different way. How would you promote and model changes in the workplace? Got the point, guys? Similar to your continuous improvement question in question 1F. Question 13. Just you need to mention 6 documents that you complete. You already have that information. Bowel chart, shower chart, incident reports, hazard reports, behavior chart, food and fluid chart. Is that clear for everyone?
Yes.
You just need to mention 6 documents that you complete as a PCA. Everyone has a screenshot?
Yes.
Yes.
Now the next question, question 14. Again, it's similar to your question 1F, continuous improvement. How do you contribute to the continuous improvement? Next question, who can you seek advice from in improving your skills and knowledge? Your supervisors, managers, and HR. Question 16, who would you speak to in relation to the accessing options for skill development? Again, supervisor, manager, and HR. And the next ones, these are definitions. I'll leave that with you. Definitions, I'll leave it with you. However, I'll go through this particular question. Child protection across all health and community service context, including duty of care when the child is not the client. Now you go and assist a client. Say your client is Mr. Frank, who is 85 years old, and you see that Mr. Frank's grandchild in that home has bruises on his body, and whenever you go, he is crying most of the time. And you are suspecting that this child is being abused. Do you think, even if the child is not your client, do you think you have an obligation to report this? The child is not your client, but you're going and assessing Mr. Frank, who is an elderly person, but you interact with the child where you have seen that the child may have been abused because most of the time he's crying or he has bruises on his body. Now, do you have any obligation to report this?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
As a human, yes, we can.
There is a legal requirement too, irrespective of whether the child is not is a client or not. If you come across any kind of child abuse or suspecting child abuse, it's a legal requirement that you have to report this to the supervisor, Department of Human Rights, and police. Everyone good to go there? Now, question 18, reflecting and summarizing. I believe you guys are clear on that. You got some PowerPoints as well. And question 19, question 19, what is a collaboration? Collaboration is working together. Confrontation, it's an approach with an intention to argue. That's a difference. Collaboration, you're working together to achieve a particular goal. Confrontation is an approach where you're intending to argue. You're not focusing on the problem or a solution. Rather, it is an argumentative approach. Now, question 20, which we have already discussed. What are the potential constraints of communication? Now, guys, I might have given, some of these students are giving me simply answers in the way how I give you. For example, I give you, say, disability, okay? And people are also giving me answer disability. Now, I give you a guide. I'm assisting you. Now, this question, this is what you consider. These are some of the ideas, okay? Now, giving an idea itself is a big help, all right? I'm not going to write and give it to you, or I'm not going to tell you that you have to just write what I am saying. No, I'm giving you a rough idea on what are the areas that you have to touch base on that particular question. And then you'll research or you think about it or read some books or read some resources that I provided you. And then you'll elaborate your answers on your understanding. Now, what is an expected number of words in a question? I'm expecting about at least 200 words in a question, okay? But for example, it again depends on the question. I can't just stick to 200 words because every question has a different requirement. For example, let's talk about question number 1. Question number 1 is actually covering the entire topic. You might probably go 500 words or 1,000 words here because it's covering 6 topics. Too long question. Okay, and it almost covers everything that we discussed today. Very long question. Now, if you talk about question 2, as simple as this, 6 points. Question 3, maybe 8 points or 6 points. Question C, 150 or 200 words. 200 words, 100 words for motivational interviewing, 100 words for coercive approach. Influences, it's list. 6 words. 6 points, 6 words, depending on what you're writing. 2 lines, maybe within less than 75 words or 80 words, depending on the question. I can't give a benchmark answer on how many words each question should be. For example, why is nonverbal communication important? 80 words. It depends on the question. Are you all clear with that?
Yes.
It's depending on the question. There is no, but should not be too short when especially they're asking you discuss. A discuss means it's paragraphs. Yeah, is that clear for everyone? Not every question has a response that is included as a points. Not every question is 1-line answer or 2-line answer. It depends on the question and what you're writing. And it should be to the point where you don't have to, for example, if you write about question number 1, you might write 4-5 lines each section. Question 1A, 5 lines. That should cover something to do with effective communication, something to do with the constraints. Now, for example, one of the questions says, what are the constraints and what are the strategies? Now, you write a constraint, write a strategy on how to address it. Write a constraint, strategy how to address it. Does that make sense to everyone? Right. So students who have questions now will stay back. And again, this is the last and the final warning. Students who are coming late to the class will not be allowed from next week. Will not be allowed. And students who are traveling will also be not allowed in the class. Traveling, working, no more exceptions on this. I will not be able to provide the assessment to those students who are not adhering to the class rules.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, how can we confirm after we sent our assignment to you? Because I
You
got
can
a
check with
problem.
me here, but usually I don't individually reply because it's too many. Individually reply to them that, I'm receiving the assessment. But if you have a doubt if it's going through to me or not, you can definitely check with me, but you can check that after the attendance class. Okay. Individual questions, I'm happy to address them.
Yes. While doing the questions, still, if we are unclear and we want to have a little more discussion to have a deep understanding, so how do we do that?
Then you have to contact me. There are two ways to do this. One is that students who have questions, for example, if you're not able to understand something or you need assistance, okay, for those things, you can discuss with me. For example, today's session. Next week, you can discuss with me.
Okay.
Okay, after the session, after the attendance. Any personal questions, I will only take them after the attendance.
Okay.
Because I'm not going to waste 46 students' time here. Individual questions will be addressed after the attendance, and they have to stay back. They can ask me any questions that they may have. Okay. Now, let me call your names for the attendance. Now, government funding students, Yun Jeng, Yun Sion,
Present, sir.
Kin, I marked you, yes.
Thank you,
Parmila,
sir.
Soumya marked,
Yes, sir.
Tant, Jello, Harpreet, Brendan. Now, Soumya and Kinsun, you guys just stay back, okay? I'll talk to you after the attendance.
Yes, sir.
Anisha, Anupa, Asmita, Ashmita,
Yes,
Astika,
sir.
Ashmita Bandari,
Yes, sir.
Bandana,
Yes, sir.
Bikram, Shelly, Dipali, Deepika, Diana,
Yes, Deepika.
Deepika marked, Diana, Dilini marked,
Yes, sir.
Dilsi,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Dilsi marked. Is that Dilshi or Dilsi?
My name is Dilshay, sir, on birth certificate.
Gemma, Gladys marked, Gurpreet, Isha marked,
Thank you, sir.
Jamila marked.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So can I leave? I'm not feeling well.
That's fine. Students who have whose attendance is marked, you guys can leave if you want.
Thank you, sir. Have a nice day.
No worries. I'll see you next Saturday.
Thank you,
Bye.
sir. Bye.
Jaspreet,
Yes, sir.
Jessica
Thank you.
marked. Jyoti marked.
Yes, there, please.
Kavita, Kamalpreet,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Kamalpreet marked. Himraj marked.
Yes, sir.
Kavita
Thank you.
marked.
Thank you, sir.
Kushi, Kulvinda
Present, sir.
marked. Kumar, Kushum, Lipu marked. Loma, Madeline, Manisha, Maria marked. Marianne, Michael marked. Mohan,
Present, sir.
Pavitra,
Yes, sir.
marked. Pratigya, Pratik,
Yes, sir.
Pratigya marked. Pratik, Pratima, Pooja,
Present, sir.
Pooja marked. Raju,
Yes, sir.
marked. Rivaj marked.
Yep.
Riya,
Yes, sir.
marked. Roshni Buddhatoki,
Present, sir.
marked. Roshni Dami, Sabina, Samiksha marked. Sapana,
Yes, sir.
marked. Shanti,
Yes, sir.
marked. Shraddha, Sophia, Sophia,
Yes, sir.
marked. Sohit,
Yes, sir.
Sonika,
Yeah.
Christina, marked. And stay back, Christina.
Yes, sir.
Christina, stay back. Sukhjeet marked.
Yes.
Sukhmanpreet, Sumina, Sunil, Suraj,
Yes, sir.
Suraj marked. Sushmita Dangal, Saida marked. Tudang marked. Tresel Tashidami, Lipti marked. Sharing, Tamang. Okay, if I have missed anyone's name, do let me know.
Excuse me, sir.
Mahima Powder,
Yes.
marked.
Thank you, sir.
Lorna. Rakesh. Lorna.
Lorna.
Sir, Goma.
Alright, students whose names I have missed, let me just send me a message in the public chat with your full name and student ID. Lipu, I have marked you already. Lorna, I have marked you. You don't have to send me again. Lorna, I have marked you. I need your full name and student ID as well, guys.
Sir,
Full
Goma.
name and student ID, please. Full name and student ID in the public chat.